The rhythmic kneading of Anya's skilled hands was her only solace, a silent conversation between muscle and spirit. Each day, as dawn painted the grimy windows of her small rented apartment, she would rise, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unyielding determination. Life had dealt her a hand of relentless struggle, a constant uphill battle against mounting debts and the ever-present spectre of poverty. Her massage studio, a modest space tucked away on a bustling side street, was more than just a business. It was her sanctuary, her battlefield, and her last bastion of hope. Despite the worn-out massage table and the faint scent of stale incense that clung to the air, Anya poured her entire being into her craft. Her hands, though calloused from years of tireless work, possessed an almost magical ability to soothe aching bodies and weary souls. Clients often remarked on the surprising strength and intuitive touch that belied her slender frame, but few understood the sheer necessity that drove her. Every dollar earned was meticulously accounted for, a fragile shield against the relentless onslaught of medical bills for her ailing mother and the constant threat of eviction. There was no room for error, no space for self-pity, only the unwavering focus on survival. Miles away, in a world of polished chrome and soaring skyscrapers, resided a man whose name echoed through the hallowed halls of finance with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Mr. Sterling. A titan of industry, a billionaire CEO whose empire spanned continents, he was a figure of absolute power and unwavering resolve. Sterling was known not just for his staggering wealth, but for his almost predatory efficiency, his uncanny ability to seize opportunities where others saw only obstacles, and his chilling reputation for getting precisely what he desired, no matter the cost. His eyes, often described as chips of ice, missed nothing, and his presence commanded an almost immediate deference. Whispers of ruthless takeovers and cutthroat negotiations followed him like a shadow, tales of decimated competitors and uncompromising victories. He was a man who moved through life with the precision of a predator, his every decision calculated, his every action designed to further his own insurmountable ambitions. No one dared to cross him, and few ever truly understood the depths of his enigmatic mind. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Anya was preparing for her last client of the day, her phone buzzed. It was her assistant, her voice laced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Anya, you won't believe this," she began. "Mr. Sterling's office just called. He specifically requested you for a private session, tonight, at his residence." Anya's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Sterling. The name alone carried a weight, a reputation that preceded him like a storm front. She had heard the stories, read the headlines, and the idea of being alone with such a formidable figure sent a shiver down her spine. "He wants me," she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why me? I'm sure he has access to the city's finest therapists." Her assistant explained that the request was unequivocal, non-negotiable. Anya initially refused, her instincts screaming at her to decline. The thought of entering his domain, a place synonymous with unimaginable power and potential danger, filled her with dread. But then, a cruel reminder flashed in her mind. The overdue utility bill, the urgent prescription her mother needed. The desperation, a familiar, gnawing ache, began to override her apprehension. The fee offered was exorbitant, a sum that could momentarily silence the chorus of her financial anxieties. With a heavy sigh and a prayer for strength, she reluctantly accepted. As the chauffeured car glided through the wrought-iron gates of Mr. Sterling's estate, Anya felt an almost physical sensation of crossing into another world. The mansion, a monolithic structure of dark stone and towering windows, loomed against the twilight sky like a fortress. Inside, the opulence was breathtaking, a symphony of marble, silk, and priceless artworks that seemed to mock her humble existence. A stern-faced butler led her through cavernous hallways, each step echoing the chasm between her world and his. Finally, she was ushered into a vast, dimly lit study, and there he was. Mr. Sterling stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, his back to her, silhouetted against the city lights. He turned slowly, his gaze sharp and piercing, settling on her It was an intense, unsettling scrutiny that seemed to strip away her composure, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. A profound silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken expectations and the palpable weight of the class divide separating them. Anya swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. This was no ordinary massage appointment. This was an encounter that promised to be anything but ordinary. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, an almost predatory energy that emanated from the billionaire. She felt like a small, insignificant creature under the unwavering gaze of a powerful, enigmatic being. The dramatic setting only amplified her unease, making her acutely aware of the vast gulf that separated their two worlds. It was clear that in this man's presence, she was merely a pawn in a game whose rules she didn't yet understand. Anya took a deep, steadying breath, her professional training kicking in despite the intimidating atmosphere. She moved with practiced grace, setting up her portable massage table in the designated spot, her movements precise and efficient. Mr. Sterling watched her every action, his expression unreadable, a faint flicker in his eyes, the only indication of his internal processing. As she prepared her oils and warmed her hands, she focused on her craft, allowing the familiar ritual to ground her. She had to treat him like any other client, regardless of his immense wealth or unnerving presence. This was her profession, her sanctuary, and she would not let his aura disrupt her focus. The session began, Anya's hands moving expertly over Mr. Sterling's shoulders, feeling the knots and tension beneath his expensive suit fabric. Her touch was firm yet gentle, intuitive and deeply informed by years of dedicated practice. She worked tirelessly, her thumbs and fingers navigating the landscape of his back, seeking out areas of stress and applying pressure with a skilled precision that spoke volumes of her talent. Mr. Sterling remained utterly silent, his stillness almost unnerving. Yet Anya could feel the subtle shift in his muscles, the gradual release of tension under her ministrations. She was an artist in her own right, her canvas the human body, her medium touch and empathy. For a fleeting moment, the divide between them seemed to lessen, replaced by the universal language of physical relief. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Sterling spoke, his voice a low rumble that cut through the quiet hum of the room. "Your hands," he observed, his eyes still closed, a hint of something unidentifiable in his tone. "They are remarkably strong, yet incredibly sensitive. It's an unusual combination." Anya paused, surprised by his remark. Most clients offered generic compliments. His observation felt pointed, almost analytical. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice soft, maintaining her professional composure. "It comes from years of practice." He offered no further comment, and Anya resumed her work. A new layer of curiosity added to her initial apprehension. What was he truly seeing? What was he assessing? The massage continued for another half hour, a silent ballet of touch and release. Anya felt a sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride in her ability to bring a measure of peace to even the most formidable individual. As she concluded the session, gently wiping away the excess oil, Mr. Sterling slowly sat up. His movements were deliberate, his gaze once again fixed on her, cold and piercing, erasing any fleeting warmth from his earlier comment. The professional distance returned, sharper than before. He stood, retrieved a small, elegant leather wallet from his jacket pocket, and extracted a single, crisp check. He didn't hand it to her. He placed it on the nearby mahogany side table, a deliberate and almost impersonal gesture. Anya's eyes drifted to the check, her breath catching in her throat. The amount written there was staggering, far beyond any fee she had ever commanded for a single session. It was a sum that could erase her debts, secure her mother's treatment, and lift the crushing weight of her financial burdens in an instant. $1 million. Her mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the figure. Before she could process the shock, Mr. Sterling spoke again, his voice devoid of emotion, each word landing with the weight of a stone. "That," he stated, gesturing vaguely towards the check, "is for one night, with me." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, shattering the fragile professionalism Anya had painstakingly built. Disbelief warred with a sudden searing anger. Her carefully constructed composure crumbled, exposing a raw vulnerability she rarely allowed to surface. "What did you say?" she whispered, her voice trembling, the question more a desperate plea for clarification than a genuine inquiry. Surely, she had misheard. Surely this man, for all his power and wealth, could not be so blatant, so utterly devoid of respect. Mr. Sterling remained impassive, his gaze unwavering. "You heard me correctly, Miss Anya. $1 million for one night of your time. My terms are simple, and my offer is non-negotiable." His tone was dismissive, as if he were discussing a business transaction, not a deeply personal and ethically charged proposition. Anya felt a flush of indignation creep up her neck. Her hands, which moments ago had been instruments of healing, clenched into tight fists. The desperate need for money, which had driven her to this opulent cage, now clashed violently with her inherent morality and self-respect. "No," she said, the word a defiant whisper at first, then growing in strength. "Absolutely not. I am a masseuse, Mr. Sterling, not whatever you seem to think I am." Her voice cracked with emotion, a mixture of hurt and outrage. The audacity of the man, to so casually reduce her worth, her dignity, to a monetary sum, was infuriating. She stared at the check, a symbol of both salvation and absolute degradation. Her mind screamed at her to take it, to end her suffering, to secure her family's future. But her heart, her very soul, recoiled in disgust. Mr. Sterling simply raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something akin to mild amusement in his cold eyes. He showed no surprise, no anger, no visible reaction to her vehement refusal. "As you wish," he said, his voice still calm, almost dismissive, as if her rejection was merely a minor inconvenience, an expected formality in a game he had already won. He made no move to retrieve the check, leaving it there, a silent, tempting testament to his power and her poverty. The weight of his indifference was almost as crushing as the offer itself. As Anya gathered her belongings, her hands shaking, a single question echoed in her mind. A haunting refrain that would follow her long after she left the mansion. Why her? Out of all the people in the world, all the willing participants his vast fortune could command, why had he chosen her, a struggling masseuse with nothing but her integrity? The question lingered, a dark shadow clinging to her resolve, a seed of doubt planted in the fertile ground of her desperation. Anya stumbled out of the mansion, the cool night air doing little to extinguish the fire of indignation burning within her. The opulent gates closed behind her with a soft, definitive click, sealing her back into a world of stark reality, a world where $1 million was an unimaginable fortune, not a casual proposition. The check, still lying on Mr. Sterling's polished table, felt heavier than any burden she had ever carried, its phantom weight pressing down on her shoulders. Her mind, a chaotic maelstrom of anger, confusion, and a persistent, insidious temptation, refused to quiet. The image of Sterling's impassive face, his cold, assessing eyes, replayed endlessly, a silent accusation against her pride. She walked for what felt like hours, the city lights blurring into an indifferent haze. The clamor of her own thoughts drowned out the urban symphony around her. How could someone be so callous, so utterly devoid of human decency? Yet, beneath the righteous fury, a colder, more pragmatic voice began to whisper. $1 million, it was a sum that could obliterate her debts, save her family home, and, most importantly, secure the life-saving treatment her mother desperately needed. The image of her mother, frail and fading, flickered before her eyes, a stark reminder of the relentless financial quicksand that threatened to engulf them all. Her family's past was a tapestry woven with threads of hardship and resilience. She remembered the day her father, a man whose hands were once strong and calloused from honest labor, had collapsed, his breath ragged, his face ashen. The diagnosis had been swift and brutal, a rare, aggressive illness that devoured savings and hope with equal ferocity. Anya, then barely an adult, had watched their modest life unravel, piece by agonizing piece. The small, comfortable house, once filled with laughter, became a mausoleum of quiet anxieties. Medical bills piled up like insurmountable mountains, each envelope a fresh stab of despair. It was this crucible of suffering that had forged her unwavering dedication, her tireless pursuit of every extra shift, every potential client. Her hands, her gift, became her only weapon against a world determined to break her spirit. This was the reason she worked until her fingers ached, until exhaustion claimed her. This was the silent vow she had made to herself, to her family. She would never let them drown. Upon reaching her cramped apartment, a sanctuary that suddenly felt suffocating, Anya found herself reaching for her phone. There was only one person who could truly understand the moral tightrope she walked. A few rings later, Elena's warm, familiar voice answered, a balm to Anya's agitated soul. Anya recounted the evening's events, her voice trembling with a mixture of shame and outrage. Elena, her oldest friend, listened patiently, her usual effervescence replaced by a solemn quiet. "Anya," Elena finally said, her voice laced with concern, "that's monstrous. But $1 million for one night. It's an impossible choice. Your mother—" She trailed off, the unspoken weight of Anya's filial duty hanging heavy in the air. "You can't sacrifice your soul for that, Anya. No amount of money is worth that, but I understand why you're even considering it. Just be careful. Men like him don't give without taking far more than you expect." Elena's words, though cautious, subtly reinforced the internal battle raging within Anya. Principles versus survival. The two forces clashed, tearing at her resolve. Unable to sleep, Anya found herself staring at her laptop screen, Mr. Sterling's name typed into the search bar. She needed to understand him, to rationalize the cold, calculating mind behind the offer. The internet painted a portrait of a ruthless titan, incorporate predator who built his empire on the ashes of his rivals. Articles detailed hostile takeovers, controversial mergers, and an almost mythical ability to predict market shifts. He was a man feared, respected, but rarely, if ever, loved. His public image was one of impenetrable stoicism, a man entirely consumed by power and profit. Yet, as Anya delved deeper, sifting through financial reports and dry corporate biographies, a subtle discrepancy emerged. A fleeting mention in an old, obscure article about a charity event he had once hosted. It spoke of a significant donation made anonymously to a foundation supporting children's hospitals, a cause seemingly at odds with his cutthroat persona. Another brief snippet alluded to a personal tragedy, a loss in his early life that had supposedly shaped his relentless drive. It was a mere whisper in the cacophony of his achievements, easily dismissed as PR spin, but it planted a tiny seed of doubt in Anya's mind. Was there more to this man than met the eye? Was the ruthlessness a shield, an armor forged in some unseen fire? The question, though faint, began to mingle with the haunting refrain of her own desperation, clouding her judgment just enough to consider the unthinkable once more. The harsh reality of Anya's existence solidified with the arrival of a crisp, white envelope bearing the landlord's logo. Inside, the eviction notice lay stark and unforgiving, a cold decree demanding immediate action. Her heart plummeted, a familiar dread coiling in her stomach. 2 months overdue on rent, and now this, the small apartment, her only refuge, felt like it was crumbling around her. Just days later, another letter arrived, this one from the hospital, detailing the escalating costs of her mother's treatment, a sum that dwarfed Anya's meager savings. The deadline for the next payment loomed, an insurmountable mountain threatening to engulf them all. The weight of her responsibilities, once a manageable burden, now felt like an avalanche, threatening to bury her beneath its crushing force. Her mother's fragile health, her sister's education, her own precarious future, all hinged on a financial miracle. Sleep became a luxury Anya could no longer afford. She spent her nights pacing her tiny living room, the city lights outside her window mocking her despair. The image of Mr. Sterling, cold and enigmatic, flickered in her mind, his $1 million offer echoing like a siren song. $1 million. It wasn't just money, it was freedom, salvation. It was the surgery her mother desperately needed, the tuition her sister deserved, the security Anya had always dreamed of but never attained. It was the escape from this suffocating cycle of poverty and worry. The internal battle raged fiercely, her principles screaming in protest against the pragmatic voice of survival. How could she even consider such a thing? How could she not? The turning point arrived with a vivid dream of her mother, frail and fading, her eyes pleading for help Anya couldn't provide. Anya woke with a gasp, tears streaming down her face. The dream, a cruel mirror of her waking fears, shattered her remaining resolve. Principles, she realized with a bitter taste in her mouth, were a luxury she simply couldn't afford. Not when her family's very existence hung in the balance. She would frame it as a sacrifice, a necessary evil, a transaction of her time for their future. It wasn't about her, it was about them. She would be a warrior, laying down her own comfort, her own dignity, on the altar of their well-being. This wasn't selling her soul. It was renting a piece of herself to buy her family a future. With trembling hands, Anya picked up her phone. The number for Mr. Sterling's assistant, still etched in her memory, seemed to burn under her fingertips. Each digit pressed felt like a step further down a path she never imagined treading. The phone rang once, twice, before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Sterling Enterprises, how may I direct your call?" Anya's voice, surprisingly steady, despite the tremor in her heart, requested to speak with Mr. Sterling's personal assistant regarding a previous arrangement. A brief pause, then, "One moment, please." The silence that followed stretched, thick with anticipation and dread. When the assistant returned, her tone was businesslike, devoid of any surprise. "Ms. Petrova, Mr. Sterling has been informed of your decision. He is pleased you have reconsidered. We will arrange for a car to pick you up tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. Please ensure you are ready." The words, delivered with such detached efficiency, solidified the reality of her choice. There was no judgment, no emotion, just the cold, hard logistics of a transaction. A strange sense of surrender washed over Anya, a quiet resignation mixed with a nascent flicker of hope. The die was cast. As she hung up the phone, Anya felt an unsettling mix of emotions. Dread, certainly, at the unknown contours of the night ahead. But also a strange, almost defiant resolve. She would protect her heart, build walls around her emotions, and see this through. She would be Anya, the professional masseuse, not Anya, the desperate woman. She would go, she would endure, and she would emerge with the means to save her family. The feeling was akin to standing on the edge of a precipice, knowing the only way forward was to jump. She took a deep, shaky breath, the resolve solidifying within her. There was no turning back now. The night loomed, a canvas of uncertainty, but Anya vowed she would paint it with her own strength, her own silent courage. She would face Mr. Sterling, not as a victim, but as a woman making an agonizing choice for those she loved most. The sacrifice was hers, but the future she hoped would be theirs. The following evening, as dusk painted the city in hues of orange and violet, a sleek black limousine glided silently to a stop outside Anya's modest apartment building. Its polished surface reflected the fading light, a stark, almost audacious contrast to the worn brick and peeling paint of her surroundings. For a moment, Anya simply stared, a knot tightening in her stomach. This wasn't just a car. It was a portal, transporting her from one reality to an entirely alien one. Taking one last fortifying breath, she descended the steps, each footfall feeling impossibly heavy, and slipped into the plush leather interior. The door closed with a soft, definitive thud, sealing her within its opulent confines, a prisoner and a passenger all at once. The journey was a blur of city lights giving way to tree-lined avenues, then ultimately to a secluded, winding road bordered by ancient, towering oaks. When the limousine finally slowed, Anya gasped, her eyes widening in involuntary awe. Before her stood an estate that defied description. A sprawling architectural marvel carved from dark stone and shimmering glass, nestled amidst acres of meticulously manicured gardens. Floodlights illuminated its grandeur, casting long, dramatic shadows that seemed to dance in the twilight. It wasn't merely a house, it was a fortress of wealth, an imposing testament to Mr. Sterling's boundless power. Anya, accustomed to the cramped confines of her own life, felt an immediate, overwhelming sense of insignificance. A liveried chauffeur opened her door, his expression impassive, revealing nothing. Anya stepped out, the gravel crunching softly under her sensible shoes, feeling the cool evening air on her skin. She walked towards the massive ornate front doors, each step a conscious effort to steady herself, to appear composed. The doors swung open silently as she approached, revealing a cavernous entrance hall where marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of a colossal chandelier. The air within was cool and still, carrying the faint, expensive scent of old wood and fresh flowers. Every surface, every object, spoke of untold riches and impeccable taste, a world away from the worn fabric of her own existence. Mr. Sterling stood at the far end of the hall, near a sweeping staircase that seemed to climb endlessly into the upper reaches of the mansion. He was dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit, his figure silhouetted against the ambient light. His presence was as commanding as the architecture surrounding him. As Anya approached, he offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod, his eyes, those intense, unreadable eyes, fixing on her. There was no warmth, no welcome, merely an acknowledgement. "Ms. Petrova," he stated, his voice a low, resonant rumble that echoed slightly in the vast space. "Thank you for coming." His politeness, though formal, was unexpectedly disarming. It offered no hint of the shocking proposition he had made, no trace of the ruthlessness she had come to expect. This detached courtesy only heightened Anya's unease, making him even more enigmatic. Anya managed a small, tight smile, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Mr. Sterling," she replied, her voice barely a whisper in the echoing hall. She found herself searching his face for any flicker of emotion, any clue to his true intentions, but found none. He was a mask of carefully constructed composure. "Please, follow me," he instructed, turning and beginning to ascend the grand staircase. Anya followed, her gaze sweeping across the opulent surroundings. Tapestries of ancient design adorned the walls, priceless works of art hung in gilded frames, and antique furniture sat poised as if awaiting a royal decree. Each object seemed to whisper tales of wealth and history, a stark reminder of the chasm between their worlds. As they reached the top of the stairs, Mr. Sterling paused, turning to face her. "The arrangements for this evening are quite simple, Ms. Petrova," he began, his voice devoid of any inflection that might betray his thoughts. "There are no demands on your person beyond your presence. You are merely to accompany me." Anya's brow furrowed slightly. No demands. The vagueness of his rules was more unsettling than any explicit instruction could have been. It left too much to the imagination, too much room for interpretation, and a chilling sense of the unknown. Her mind raced, trying to decipher the true meaning behind his words. Was this a test? A psychological game? As he spoke, Anya's gaze drifted past him, catching on a subtle detail. Tucked away on a small, ornate table in the alcove, just beyond the staircase, was a framed photograph. It was old, faded with time, depicting a young boy with bright, hopeful eyes, standing beside an older man. The man's arm was around the boy, a gesture of affection. But it was not the subjects that truly caught her eye. It was the man's hands. They were broad, strong, with calloused knuckles, hands that looked strikingly familiar, hands that reminded her, with an unnerving jolt, of her own father's. A flicker of recognition, a whisper of a forgotten memory, stirred within her. What was her father's picture doing in Mr. Sterling's mansion? The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine. Mr. Sterling, seemingly oblivious to her momentary distraction, turned and continued down a long, dimly lit corridor. Anya pushed the unsettling thought aside, forcing herself to focus on the present. The corridor was lined with more closed doors, each one a mystery. The slow, deliberate walk towards an unknown room built an almost unbearable tension. Every step felt like a descent into the heart of a puzzle, a journey towards a revelation that she instinctively knew would be far more complex than she had ever anticipated. The night had only just begun, and already the carefully constructed walls around Anya's heart felt dangerously close to crumbling. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, each step Anya took echoing the frantic beat of her own heart. The air, thick with the scent of aged wood and expensive polish, pressed in on her, amplifying her growing sense of unease. She had anticipated a bedroom, a lavish chamber designed for seduction, but the path Mr. Sterling chose led them further into the mansion's depths, away from what she imagined were the private quarters. His silence was unnerving, a stark contrast to the cacophony of questions swirling in her mind. The faint, almost imperceptible hint of a gentle classical melody began to drift from her head, a subtle change in the mansion's pervasive quiet. Finally, Mr. Sterling stopped before a pair of towering, intricately carved mahogany doors. He pushed them open with a soft creak, revealing not a bedroom, but a vast, high-ceilinged study. Rows upon rows of leather-bound books filled floor-to-ceiling shelves, their spines glinting under the soft glow of strategically placed lamps. A large antique globe stood in one corner, and a magnificent, dark wood desk dominated the center of the room, impeccably organized. It was a sanctuary of knowledge and contemplation, not of intimacy. Anya's breath hitched. This was not what she had prepared for, not what the $1 million offer had implied. Her carefully constructed defenses, built around the expectation of a transactional encounter, wavered. Mr. Sterling entered the study, his movements precise and unhurried. He gestured towards a plush, velvet armchair near the unlit fireplace, a silent invitation for her to sit. Anya complied, her eyes still scanning the room, searching for clues, for meaning in this unexpected turn. He did not sit opposite her, but instead walked towards the large bay window that overlooked the moonlit gardens, his back to her. The classical music, she now realized, emanated from a discreetly placed sound system, a hauntingly beautiful piece that added to the surreal atmosphere. Then he spoke, his voice lower now, softer than she had ever heard it, carrying a weight she hadn't detected before. "My father loved this room," he began, his gaze fixed on the darkness outside. "He spent countless hours here, lost in thought, in books, in dreams." Anya remained silent, her mind racing. This was not about the deal, not about her. This was personal. He paused, a long, contemplative silence stretching between them, broken only by the melancholic strains of the music. He was a man of immense intellect, Ms. Petrova, but also a man of great trust. A trust, unfortunately, that was sometimes misplaced. Anya felt a prickle of alarm. The shift in his demeanor was palpable. The cold, calculating CEO had momentarily receded, replaced by a man burdened by something profound. He turned slowly from the window. His eyes, usually so sharp and impenetrable, now held a distant, almost mournful quality. He walked towards a smaller glass-fronted cabinet, his fingers tracing the delicate carvings. "Did you know," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "that your father was once a close acquaintance of mine?" The words struck Anya like a physical blow. Her shock was absolute, her confusion overwhelming. The $1 million offer, the entire bewildering night, suddenly took on a sinister new dimension. Her father? How? When? The photograph in the alcove flashed through her mind. The young boy and the man with hands like her father's. It couldn't be a coincidence. The carefully constructed narrative of her life, of her father's simple existence, began to unravel at the edges. Mr. Sterling opened the cabinet, retrieving a small, intricately carved wooden box. He held it carefully, almost reverently, before placing it on the desk. He was more than an acquaintance, in fact. Sterling corrected himself, his gaze fixed on the box. He was a partner, for a time, a trusted collaborator on a project that meant everything to my family. He finally looked at Anya, and in his eyes she saw not the predatory glint she had come to expect, but a deep, simmering pain, a long-held grievance that had finally found its voice. And then he vanished, taking with him not just his presence, but something far more valuable. The first crack in Sterling's impenetrable facade had appeared, and through it, Anya glimpsed a raw, unexpected vulnerability. The air in the study thickened with unspoken history, with the weight of a past connection she had never known existed. Her father, the quiet, hard-working man she adored, suddenly seemed to be a stranger with a hidden life. The $1 million offer, which had once seemed a straightforward, albeit morally compromising transaction, now felt like a cryptic message, a key to a secret she was utterly unprepared to unlock. Sterling reached into the wooden box, his fingers carefully extracting a single, yellowed photograph. He held it out to her, and as Anya took it, her hands trembling slightly, she saw it clearly. It was the same image from the alcove, a younger, smiling version of Mr. Sterling as a boy, standing beside his father. And there, standing a little to the side, looking younger but undeniably him, was her own father. His arm casually draped over Sterling's father's shoulder, a wide, genuine smile on his face. The connection was undeniable, irrefutable, and with it, the terrifying realization that the night and the offer were not about her at all, but about a long-buried history that now threatened to consume them both. The photograph, a silent sentinel of a bygone era, dropped from Anya's numb fingers onto the polished mahogany desk. It landed with a soft thud, a stark punctuation mark to the chilling revelation. Her gaze, wide with disbelief, flickered from the image to Sterling, then back again. The comforting, familiar narrative of her father's life, a tapestry woven with humble threads of dedication and quiet struggle, was now being violently unpicked before her eyes. Sterling, observing her reaction with an almost clinical detachment, finally spoke, his voice losing its earlier softness, gaining a hardened edge. "That photograph," he began, gesturing vaguely towards the fallen picture, "was taken just weeks before your father vanished. Before he took with him not just our trust, but my father's life work. An invention that would have revolutionized an entire industry. An innovation that was poised to lift my family out of obscurity and into prosperity." Anya's mind reeled. An invention? Her father? The man who spent his days repairing leaky faucets and fixing broken appliances? The idea was preposterous, yet the evidence, however circumstantial, was accumulating. "What are you talking about?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper, laced with an anger she hadn't known she possessed. "My father is a good man. He couldn't do anything like that." A desperate need to defend him surged through her, a primal urge to protect the image of the man she revered. Sterling's lips curled into a humorless smile. "Good men, Miss Petrova, are often capable of the most extraordinary betrayals, especially when desperation or greed enters the equation." He paused, allowing his words to hang heavy in the air, each one a hammer blow to her carefully constructed reality. "The $1 million, Anya, was never about a night with you in the way you assumed. It was a test, a rather crude, yet effective way to gauge your character. To see if the daughter possessed the same opportunistic spirit as the father, or if there was a shred of integrity left in the Petrova line. The implication was a fresh wound. He had played her, manipulated her desperation, all to satisfy some ancient, festering grudge. The humiliation burned, hot and acrid, mixing with the burgeoning fear and confusion. "A test?" she repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "You put me through all of this, made me question everything just for a test." "Precisely," Sterling affirmed, his eyes now cold and unwavering. "My father, a brilliant but trusting man, poured his heart and soul into a groundbreaking energy converter. A device that could have provided clean, affordable power to millions. Your father, ostensibly his closest confidant and technical assistant, was privy to every detail, every blueprint, every secret. Then, one day, he simply disappeared. And with him, all the critical schematics, the prototypes, the very essence of my father's life work." Anya shook her head vigorously, her long hair swaying with the force of her denial. "No, that's impossible. My father would never... He was never involved in anything like that. He's an electrician, a handyman, not some industrial spy." Her voice cracked with the strain of her protest, her conviction faltering under the relentless assault of Sterling's words. Sterling walked over to a large antique chest, its surface polished to a mirror sheen. He opened it, revealing a compartment filled with neatly organized documents, all yellowed with age. He extracted a thick, leather-bound journal and a stack of blueprints, unfurling them on the desk beside the photograph. "These are my father's journals," he explained, his voice devoid of emotion, "detailing every step of his research, and these," he pointed to the intricate drawings, "are the original plans for the luminar converter. Notice the annotations, the detailed calculations, many of them in your father's unmistakable handwriting." Anya leaned forward, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Her eyes scanned the familiar loops and flourishes, the precise, almost artistic script she had seen countless times on grocery lists and utility bills. It was undeniably her father's hand. A cold dread seeped into her bones, chilling her to the core. The weight of her family's past, a legacy she never knew existed, settled upon her shoulders with crushing force. The man she thought she knew, the man she loved and respected, was suddenly a stranger, shrouded in a dark, bewildering secret. The $1 million, the seemingly impossible offer, now made a terrifying, tragic kind of sense. It was not a proposition of lust, but a currency of a far deeper, more painful transaction. The payment for a hidden truth. Anya's breath hitched, a strangled sound caught in her throat. Her gaze darted from the familiar handwriting to Sterling's impassive face, then back to the damning evidence spread across the desk. A tremor ran through her, a visceral rejection of the truth presenting itself so starkly. "No," she whispered, the word barely audible, a desperate plea to an indifferent universe. This isn't real. My father, he's a good man. He wouldn't do this. He couldn't." Sterling merely watched her, his expression unreadable, allowing the weight of the moment to press down on her. He offered no comfort, no softening of the blow. This was his truth, meticulously preserved, unflinchingly delivered. "He was a good man, perhaps, in your eyes," Sterling finally said, his voice flat, devoid of the earlier edge. "But to my family, he was a thief, a betrayer of trust, a destroyer of dreams." Anya's mind raced, scrambling for explanations, for any shred of evidence that could refute this horrifying accusation. "He worked long hours," she argued, her voice gaining a desperate strength. "Always with his tools, fixing things, helping people. He was never involved in grand projects, certainly not anything like this luminar converter. You're mistaken, you must be." Her hands clenched into fists, the nails digging into her palms. A futile attempt to ground herself in a reality that was rapidly dissolving. Sterling, with a deliberate slowness that was almost cruel, retrieved another document from the chest. This one was a faded, official-looking certificate. "This is a patent application," he stated, holding it up for her to see, "filed under your father's name, 3 months after my father's invention disappeared." The description matches the luminar converter precisely. The only difference, a few minor modifications, enough to claim it as his own, but the core technology, the genius, was my father's. Anya stared at the document, the ornate script blurring before her eyes. The dates, the names, the technical jargon, it all coalesced into an undeniable, suffocating reality. Her father, the tireless electrician, the quiet, dependable man who had always put his family first, had apparently been living a double life. The pieces of a confusing puzzle began to fall into place, chillingly. His sudden, unexplained absences during her childhood brushed off as urgent jobs. The periods of unexpected financial comfort, followed by equally sudden downturns, never fully explained. The way he would sometimes flinch, almost imperceptibly, when the topic of innovation or new technology came up on the news. All these small, seemingly insignificant details now screamed with a terrifying clarity. A profound sense of disillusionment washed over her, a cold wave that extinguished the warmth of her childhood memories. The hero she had always seen, the steadfast provider, was crumbling before her eyes, replaced by a shadowy figure capable of profound deceit. "Why?" she whispered, the question torn from her very core. "Why would he do something like that? He always taught me about honesty, about integrity." Her voice trailed off, lost in the labyrinth of her shattered beliefs. Sterling sighed, a sound that held the weight of years of unspoken pain. Greed, perhaps, or ambition without scruple. My father was a visionary, but naive. He trusted your father implicitly. They worked side by side, shared meals, even celebrated holidays together. My father saw him as a friend, a peer. Your father saw an opportunity. He paused, his gaze hardening once more. The theft crippled my family. My father lost everything, his life's work, his reputation, his spirit. He never recovered. The stress, the financial ruin, it led to his early demise. My mother, left with nothing, struggled for years. We were forced to sell everything to rebuild from scratch, all because of your father's actions. The revelation struck Anya like a physical blow. Her father's crime wasn't just a betrayal of trust or a theft of intellectual property. It was an act that had directly led to the ruin and ultimately the death of another family. The weight of this legacy, this inherited burden of guilt, was suffocating. She had walked into this mansion, desperate for $1 million to save her own family, only to discover that her family's past had already wrought devastation upon another. The irony was a bitter, unbearable taste in her mouth. Anger, hot and fierce, began to simmer beneath her shock. Anger at Sterling for his manipulation, but a deeper, more searing anger at her own father for the lies, for the hypocrisy, for the terrible, hidden truth that now threatened to consume them all. Anya's initial instinct, a primal urge, was to flee. The ornate mansion, once a symbol of opulence and a potential lifeline, now felt like a gilded cage, trapping her with an unbearable truth. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to run, to escape the crushing weight of her father's betrayal, to disappear from the piercing gaze of Ethan Sterling. She imagined herself bursting through the grand double doors, sprinting down the long driveway, and vanishing into the anonymity of the city, leaving this horrifying revelation far behind. But her feet remained rooted to the spot, a strange paralysis gripping her. The air in the study, thick with unspoken history, pressed down on her, making it difficult to breathe. Sterling, observing her turmoil with an unreadable expression, finally broke the silence. His voice, though still composed, carried a new, unfamiliar hint of weariness. He spoke not of vengeance, but of the profound burden he had carried for decades. Running won't change the truth, Anya, he said, his gaze softening slightly. Believe me, I've seen enough of that. My father tried to run from the shame, from the financial ruin, from the knowledge that his trusted friend had betrayed him so completely. It consumed him. It consumed my mother. It nearly consumed me. He walked towards the large window, looking out at the sprawling, manicured gardens, his back to her for a moment. For years, all I felt was a burning rage, a desire to see your father suffer as mine had, to expose him, to ruin his life, to make him pay for every single tear my mother shed, for every struggle we endured. He turned back, his eyes meeting hers, devoid of the earlier coldness. But that's not justice, Anya. That's just perpetuating a cycle of pain. What I want is resolution. I want to clear my father's name, to restore his legacy, to finally put an end to this shadow that has haunted my family for so long. He then laid out the choice before her, a proposition that was both devastating and surprisingly humane. The $1 million, he began, was never truly about buying a night with you. It was a test. A desperate attempt to see if the daughter was anything like the father, if you would choose greed, or if there was something else within you. And you chose integrity, Anya. You rejected it, even when you desperately needed it. That told me a great deal. Now, the choice is yours, he continued, his voice calm, almost pleading. You can walk away, pretend none of this ever happened. I will not stop you. But the truth will still exist. And your father will continue to live with his secret, a secret that has caused untold damage. Or you can help me. Not to destroy him, not to seek vengeance, but to find a different form of justice. A way to expose the truth, to right a historical wrong, without necessarily bringing down your entire family in the process. We can clear my father's name, restore his invention, and perhaps, in doing so, find some measure of peace for both our families. Anya felt a profound tremor run through her. Her loyalty to her father, A bond she had always considered unbreakable now clashed violently with the undeniable weight of the truth. The man she had revered, the source of her moral compass, was a thief, a deceiver whose actions had shattered another family. The evidence Sterling had presented was compelling, irrefutable. She recalled her father's furtive glances, his occasional melancholic silences, the way he would sometimes stare blankly into the distance, as if burdened by an invisible weight. All these fragmented memories now converged, forming a coherent, agonizing picture of a man living a lie. The thought of exposing him, of shattering the illusion for her mother and younger siblings, sent a cold dread through her. How could she possibly inflict such pain upon them? Yet the image of Sterling's father, a visionary betrayed, his life's work stolen, his spirit broken, was equally haunting. She saw the pain in Sterling's eyes, a pain that mirrored her own growing disillusionment. This wasn't about money anymore, not for either of them. It was about truth, about legacy, about the agonizing struggle between filial loyalty and moral obligation. Anya closed her eyes, picturing her father's kind, weathered face. Then the image of Sterling's father, the ghost from the past. His ruined life a silent accusation. The decision was not just difficult, it felt impossible. But as she opened her eyes, a quiet resolve settled within her. Her father's actions had caused immense suffering. To remain silent, to allow the lie to persist, would make her complicit. It would be a betrayal of her own integrity, the very quality Sterling had recognized in her. She had always believed in honesty, in doing what was right, regardless of the personal cost. And the right thing, however excruciating, was to help uncover the truth. She chose integrity, even if it meant facing the devastating consequences for her own family. Her gaze met Sterling's, a silent, weighty acknowledgement passing between them. Anya's voice, though soft, carried the weight of her conviction as she finally spoke. I will help you, Mr. Sterling, not for the money, but because it is the right thing to do. My father's actions, no matter how much I love him, cannot be excused. His truth must come to light, but in a way that minimizes collateral damage, especially to my mother and siblings. They are innocent in all of this. Sterling nodded slowly, a hint of respect softening his usually stern features. That is all I ever asked for, Anya. Justice, not destruction. What do you propose? Together, they began to weave a delicate strategy, a plan designed to unveil the stolen invention and intellectual property without directly implicating Anya's father in a way that would shatter their lives irrevocably. The goal was to present the truth, allowing the evidence to speak for itself, thereby restoring Sterling's family legacy while offering Anya's father a path, however narrow, to acknowledge his past without facing immediate public ruin. They decided against a sensational public event, recognizing the potential for uncontrolled chaos and irreparable harm. Instead, their focus shifted to a meticulously planned legal proceeding, a quiet but undeniable re-evaluation of historical patents and scientific claims. Anya became an invaluable asset, her intimate knowledge of her father's habits, his meticulous but often misguided organizational system, and even his sentimental attachments proving crucial. She knew where he kept old blueprints, where he filed away correspondence from decades past, and the specific quirks of his memory. She recalled a dusty attic trunk, long forgotten, that contained what her father vaguely referred to as early prototypes, items she now realized were likely the original components of Sterling's father's invention, subtly altered and represented as his own. The tension in the air was palpable as their plan began to unfold. Anya, with Sterling's discreet support, began to subtly guide conversations, plant seeds of memory, and even, accidentally, rediscover old documents within her father's study. Each step was fraught with anxiety, a tightrope walk between revelation and accusation. She felt the constant gnawing of guilt, the profound sadness of betraying her father, yet she clung to the belief that this was the only way for true healing to begin. Her father, oblivious to the careful orchestrations around him, sometimes commented on her newfound interest in his old papers, a flicker of pride mixed with a touch of bewilderment in his eyes. The legal team Sterling assembled was exceptional, working tirelessly to build a case that hinged not on direct accusation of theft, but on undeniable proof of prior invention and intellectual ownership. They prepared to challenge the validity of certain patents, presenting newly unearthed evidence that clearly demonstrated the original designs and formulations belonged to Sterling's father. Anya's role was to ensure the crucial pieces of evidence found their way into the right hands, appearing as if they had simply been overlooked or rediscovered through diligent historical research. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived, a quiet affair compared to the public spectacle they had initially feared. Anya sat in the back of the courtroom, her heart a drum against her ribs. Her father was not present, having been informed of a routine patent review that he felt was beneath his attention. Sterling, composed and resolute, watched as his legal team systematically presented their findings. Old lab notes, dated correspondence, and detailed schematics, all carefully authenticated, were laid bare. Then came the physical evidence. The early prototypes Anya had helped retrieve, their original markings subtly indicative of Sterling's father's unique design principles. The revelation wasn't a thunderclap, but a slow, undeniable dawning. The judge, a seasoned arbiter of intellectual property, meticulously examined each piece of evidence. The case was built on irrefutable facts, on the sheer weight of historical documentation and scientific precedents. The narrative that emerged was not one of malicious theft, but of an undeniable truth. The invention, long attributed to Anya's father, was in fact the brainchild of Sterling's. The implication of her father's guilt was not shouted from the rooftops, but quietly, definitively acknowledged through the undeniable evidence. Anya watched the proceedings as if from a dream, a strange mix of relief and profound sorrow washing over her. The burden of the secret, shared now with Sterling, was finally being lifted, yet the cost was immense. Her father's reputation, built on a foundation of borrowed brilliance, would now be quietly, academically dismantled. There would be no public shaming, no sensational headlines, but the truth would stand. Sterling's family name would be cleared, their legacy restored, and a historical wrong finally, quietly, righted. The justice they sought was not vengeful, but restorative, a testament to the power of truth, even when it arrived years too late. The aftermath of the quiet legal battle rippled through their lives with a force far greater than any public spectacle could have achieved. Anya's father, though spared the ignominy of a full public trial, faced a quiet and devastating professional reckoning. The academic community, subtle in its condemnations, began to scrutinize his past achievements, finding holes and inconsistencies that had previously been overlooked. Grants were withdrawn, his published works came under review, and the respect he had commanded slowly eroded, replaced by a cold, intellectual skepticism. He never directly confessed to Anya, but the weight of his unraveling reputation, the loss of his standing, became a silent, crushing burden he carried. He retreated, a ghost in his own home, his once vibrant intellect dimmed by the shadow of his past. Anya's family, initially bewildered by the sudden shift in her father's professional fortunes, slowly pieced together the fragments of truth. Her mother, a woman of quiet strength, confronted Anya not with anger, but with a profound, sorrowful understanding. The conversations were painful, filled with tears and unspoken accusations, yet they were also a crucible for healing. The family had to confront the uncomfortable truth of their patriarch's actions, the legacy of a lie that had sustained them, but ultimately poisoned their foundations. It was a period of intense grief, not for a death, but for the loss of an idealized past, a necessary grieving that paved the way for rebuilding on a foundation of honesty. They began to talk, truly talk, for the first time in years, navigating the treacherous waters of betrayal and forgiveness. Meanwhile, Mr. Sterling's family name, once tarnished by the shadow of intellectual theft, was unequivocally restored. The academic and scientific communities, having witnessed the meticulous presentation of evidence, recognized the injustice and celebrated the belated vindication of Sterling's father. The burden Sterling had carried for decades, the quiet rage and relentless pursuit of justice, finally lifted. He stood taller, his eyes holding a new, softer light. The harsh edges of his ambition slightly blunted by the resolution of his family's historical wrong. The victory was bittersweet, echoing through generations, but it was a victory nonetheless. He found a peace he hadn't known was possible, a quiet satisfaction in seeing his father's true genius acknowledged. Through this shared ordeal, an unexpected bond had forged between Anya and Sterling. It wasn't born of romance, but of a deep, mutual respect and understanding. They had navigated treacherous moral landscapes together, each making difficult choices, each bearing the weight of consequences. The common ground they found was not in their initial transaction, but in their shared commitment to truth and justice, however painful. Sterling, witnessing Anya's unwavering integrity and her quiet strength in the face of immense personal cost, saw her not as a means to an end, but as an equal, a formidable spirit. The $1 million offer, once a symbol of Sterling's cold calculation, was presented again, this time with genuine warmth and respect. He offered it not as payment for a night, nor as restitution for a past wrong, but as an investment in her future, a genuine gift. "It's not charity, Anya," he had said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "It's recognition, and perhaps a small way to help you rebuild, just as I've been able to." Anya, though deeply touched, refused the bulk of the money. Her principles, forged in the fires of her family's recent turmoil, would not allow her to accept such a sum without earning it. "I appreciate it, Mr. Sterling," she replied, her voice steady, "but I need to earn my own way now. That's the only way I can truly move forward." However, she accepted a significant portion to cover her mother's escalating medical bills, a practical and necessary compromise that allowed her to maintain her dignity while still providing for her family. This act of acceptance, carefully delineated, solidified their mutual respect. It was a testament to her growth, her understanding that sometimes accepting help was not a weakness, but a strategic act of self-preservation and love for her family. With the weight of the past slowly receding, Anya found a new sense of purpose and strength. The experience, though harrowing, had sharpened her resolve, clarified her values, and revealed an inner resilience she hadn't known she possessed. She had faced down a billionaire, confronted a family secret, and emerged with her integrity intact. She was no longer just a struggling masseuse. She was a woman who understood the true cost of truth and the profound power of standing by it. Their paths diverged, yet a final, meaningful glance lingered between Anya and Sterling. It was a look that transcended their initial transactional encounter, speaking volumes of shared history, mutual admiration, and an unspoken understanding that their lives, though separate, were now inextricably linked by the threads of justice and redemption. It was not a romantic gaze, but one of profound respect, acknowledging the journey they had undertaken together and the better versions of themselves they had become. Anya, invigorated by her newfound clarity and the quiet understanding she'd forged with Sterling, channeled her formidable work ethic into a new venture. The small, unassuming massage studio she opened in a vibrant, up-and-coming neighborhood was a testament to her journey. It wasn't just a business. It was a sanctuary, a place where she could apply her healing touch and her deep understanding of the human body, now infused with a profound empathy born from her own trials. She invested meticulously, using her savings and the portion of Sterling's assistance dedicated to her mother's medical care, to create a space that reflected her professional aspirations and her holistic approach to wellness. Each detail, from the calming aromatherapy to the ergonomically designed massage tables, spoke of her dedication. Her reputation grew organically, word of mouth spreading like wildfire among those seeking genuine therapeutic relief. Anya's hands, once burdened by the weight of her family's secrets, now moved with a freedom and purpose that clients found almost miraculous. She didn't just alleviate physical pain, she offered a moment of peace, a respite from the stresses of the world. Her business flourished, in testament to her resilience and her unwavering commitment to her craft. The financial stability she meticulously built was not a windfall, but the result of sustained effort and honest work, making it all the more satisfying. Her family, too, began to heal. Her mother, benefiting from consistent, high-quality medical care, showed significant improvement. The shadow of chronic illness that had loomed over their lives for so long began to recede, replaced by a cautious optimism. The difficult conversations about her father's past had been painful, but ultimately cathartic, while the full extent of his actions remained a complicated truth. The transparency forced upon them had allowed for a slow, arduous process of reconciliation and rebuilding trust. Her father, stripped of his secrets, had embarked on his own journey of introspection and atonement, finding a quiet corner in their lives where he could contribute without the weight of past deceptions. The family unit, though irrevocably changed, was stronger, more honest, and more resilient than before. Mr. Sterling, surprisingly, remained a presence in Anya's periphery. The experience of unearthing his family's truth, of seeing the world through Anya's eyes, had subtly softened the edges of his previously ruthless demeanor. He continued to manage his vast empire, but there was a perceptible shift in his approach. He became more inclined to philanthropy, investing in ethical startups and championing causes related to intellectual property rights and fair innovation. The cold, calculating billionaire was still formidable, but now, a thread of humanity, previously hidden, was woven into his character. He would occasionally send a discreet message, an anonymous gift to her mother's medical fund, or a thoughtful business article he thought might interest Anya. Their paths continued to cross, not in dramatic confrontations, but in quiet, almost imperceptible ways, a testament to the enduring impact they had on each other. The idea of love, or even a deeper partnership, was never explicitly spoken between them. Yet a quiet understanding lingered. It was a connection forged not through romantic ideals, but through shared trauma, mutual respect, and an unlikely alliance against injustice. They recognized in each other a similar strength, a resilience born of adversity, and an unwavering commitment to their own moral compasses. It was a bond that transcended conventional definitions, a quiet acknowledgement of two souls who had helped each other navigate the darkest corners of their lives, and emerged, if not unscathed, then certainly stronger. Anya's transformation was complete. The struggling masseuse, burdened by financial anxieties and family secrets, had blossomed into an empowered woman. She carried herself with an air of quiet confidence, her gaze clear and steady, her hands capable and purposeful. She had learned that true strength lay not in avoiding challenges, but in confronting them head-on, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Her journey had taught her the profound power of integrity, the healing nature of honesty, and the enduring capacity of the human spirit to rebuild and thrive, even from the ashes of betrayal. The final shot captures Anya, not in a grand, opulent setting, but in her own thriving studio. Sunlight streams through a large window, illuminating her as she prepares for her next client. A faint, knowing smile plays on her lips, a reflection of the hard-won peace she now carried. She glances out the window, her eyes fixed on the bustling street below, not with longing or regret, but with a quiet sense of anticipation. Her future, once a daunting, uncertain expanse, now stretched before her, bright with possibility, forged by her own hands, and illuminated by the unwavering light of her own strength and hope. It was a future where she was the author, the architect, and the enduring protagonist of her own remarkable story.